for everybody to know, the Air Force has asked retirees to come back, and it's not us. So I'm going to talk about this program here in a second, but just to be clear, Gonky and I, unlike Daniel,
many others, yes.
Well, unlike Daniel in this situation, we're not retired
yet.
So correct. We had that conversation today. We're not. We're still in, so we can't retiree come back if we're still in. So just to clear that up, but the Air Force, Doug, if you want to, I'll throw that up there. The Air Force is seeking retirees to come back to active duty, up to 4 years on active duty for returning pilots, security forces, and others. And they went by Air Force AFSC, Air Force Specialty Codes, and the 11 series is pretty high in demand. So honestly, I don't even need the article because I saw the PowerPoint. And yeah, it's critical staffing shortages, renewed tensions in the Middle East. They're looking for all this, and it's like ROTC, all these things. The thing is, if you go look at the actual slides from AFPC, I don't think there's going to be a lot of takers because it's basically it's guys and girls that are retired. So, your retiree pay and your VA or whatever will stop while you do this. I don't think the time counts towards your active duty time. So if you were like a reservist that was like 18 years active duty service and you're like, I'm going to do this to get to the magic 20, I don't think it'll get you to 20. So that's kind of probably going to eliminate some people. You still got to take PT tests. You still have to be PCS, so permanent change of station, so they can move you wherever you want. And if you decide, hey, I'm not going to do that, well, you're no longer in this program. And then there was the deployability. So, they can still, now you can say no, but if you're in a combat coded profession, you can still be deployed, which, some might say, hey, mover, why wouldn't you want to do that? Well, because if I'm a retiree, I'm probably not current in an airplane, which means they would have to give me what's called a TX course, a transition course, which in today's world are the hardest things to find for anybody. Part of the reason Gonky and I have not graced fighter communities once more, besides the fact that they hate us, but the other part of why don't we go fly? Why can't we find a job? Is because they only want current qualified people because there are no transition courses for anything. There's such a backlog on these transition courses because they're still trying to get the initial calls done, and there's only so much space, if you will. So you're not going to fly, more than likely, unless you're current enough to go, right back in, like you just retired and you still got your Form 8, which is your check ride and stuff. But more than likely, you're not going to do that. And you're basically volunteering for a staff job at the whim of whatever they have. It just doesn't sound like a great deal. Gonky, what am I missing?
No, I mean, and I guess maybe a lot of people wouldn't realize this, but there's a lot of jobs in the Navy, Air Force, probably even in the Army, where it calls for an aviator, but you're not aviating. You may be, to be part of some think tank that just needs an aviator point of view. So kind of like what Mover's saying, it's like, oh, we need pilots back. You throw your name in the hat and they're like, we don't have any money and not enough manning to send you a TX course, but we've got this think tank thing over here that's a great deal and, some windowless building somewhere. And that's where you could go. In my mind, if they were serious about this program remotely succeeding, there would be some more incentives. But Mover, did you see any incentives on the slideshow?
I'm glad you brought that up because here's a slideshow. I went and found it. So, and this is not a joke.
Are these incentives?
So you're ordered active duty and your retired grade, revert to retired status in the same grade. You're not eligible for your aviation bonus or promotion consideration. You only deploy if you volunteer unless you're in a combat coded unit like I talked about. No additional active duty service commitment. You've got to still take the PT test. And you have to have your performance documented via the performance brief static closeout, potentially subject to PCS due to mission changes. But if you say no, you're out. So that was the other part I missed in that whole good deal thing of the you don't get the bonus. So these guys, the thing I look at is like, what are you competing against? You're competing against the airlines, and the airlines are hiring like mad right now. Do you think someone who has already got their retirement is going to say, you know what, Delta, I don't want $400,000 a year to fly 8 days a month. I would rather go and do this.
I would argue, I mean, me personally, even if, I mean, just because I'm in the airlines doesn't make it or break it for me. Even if I wasn't in the airlines, it doesn't sound like a good deal, man, because all your VA and your retirement benefits stop, and
you can't double dip. I think that's, I mean, I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can't, because like guys that I've known that have come back, like it stops for reserves. Every day you do it, it stops.
Well, also it's like, well, we need to PCS you. Well, I don't want to move. Like,
move your family.
There's bases around here. You need some help. So, like I said, I don't think they're. I mean, I don't think they're serious. I mean,
I could see it if you were flying. Like, here's your, you want to go scratch that itch to go be a, F-16 aggressor at Nellis.
Well, Daniel, you're retired. Interesting.
Yeah, it is. I was reading the comments on that, and they didn't take very many, not too many takers. There's like everything you're talking about. There's no incentives. Everything is bad. It's if I've got a job with the airlines, even if it's brand new with one of the big ones, I just can't see giving that up to go to Djibouti.
Well, even if you did, the reserves and the guard exist. So, I mean, you don't have to go active duty. You can go find your Burger King jet, if you will, to have it your way and go figure out a way to have that work-life balance.
I mean, from like a Navy, I don't know what the equivalent would be like in the Air Force, but like the Navy, like a good deal, like a Super JO tour, like you go to a squadron, you're really senior junior officer, so you really can't be middle management. And you're so senior that, you don't have to stand as much duty. And basically you just lead flights.
Like, dude, that's what I was just saying. The Nellis aggressor thing. You're like, okay, I'm going to go fly red air. No red flags.
I mean,
just
this is
red
operational.
Air. Yeah. Well, I don't.
I mean, as far as active duty, but something like that would be like, oh, that's maybe. But PT test is not an incentive.
Yeah. Once you've tasted the free life, it's tough to go back.
Once you've tasted freedom.
Yeah. Would you like to go back to your prison cell, Mr. Dufresne?
That's funny because it's true.
It's true. That's it. Yeah, exactly it.
I don't think
the same thing. The same thing happened with customs when I was actually came up to my mandatory age retirement at 57. We were hurting for pilots so bad that they were offering extensions. And I thought, you know what? I love this. This is great. And so I extended. That lasted for about 1 year. And everybody kept telling me, man, go to the airlines, do this and all that. And I finally retired. And once I got out, man, that freedom.
I can live where I want.
Now,
amazing.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Oh, my God. Every day's a Saturday.
Right.
Pure speculation here. Does not represent the DoD or any of its components. But Gonky or Daniel, do you think possibly, you sat in these meetings, right, where they start throwing up, they call them COAs, courses of action. Do you think possibly this is a case of one of those where some staff guys like, I got an idea. It's going to be the bottom COA, but we're just going to put it in there because I needed 5 bullets. And, he said I had to have 5 bullets. And they're sitting in this meeting and they're like, that's the one. And you're like, whoa, it's filler. No. Yeah. Try that. You're going to get promoted tomorrow for that great idea. And nobody really was like, that's not the best idea.
Yeah. No. The good idea fairy shows up again. And
it makes a good fit rep or eval bullet,
Yeah.
single-handedly came up with a program to reinstate.
Gosh.
They have a retention problem, right? They have a recruiting
Yeah.
problem. So they're trying to plug holes in this boat that's sinking. And I don't, on the recruiting side, it's, hey, let's lower standards, and on the retention side, in my mind, they're not doing a whole lot, to be honest. So I don't know. As a whole, DOD is just kind of bleeding out, man. And they're not taking it seriously, if you ask me.
We're gonna talk about this in a minute. They're restructuring, right? So the Air Force today announced with their restructuring plan, which is, I read it and I still don't know what it means, but we're gonna talk about it anyway because why not? But I think that there's a lot of focus shifting because we're departing as Daniel. You spent a lot of your time fighting in a very specific area of operations, and we shift and then we pivot back and then we shift. But meanwhile, we've got this identity crisis where we don't necessarily know who we are and where we need to go. And I think when you do that, people kind of meander and they go, well, okay, well, it's not what your country can do for you or what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It's what can I do for me? That higher purpose, right? Because if you compare military flying on paper to airline flying, there's no comparison. Everybody's going to say, well, I'm going to make a ton of money. What keeps people in the seats, job satisfaction and a higher calling and thinking this is about something bigger than myself. I think when you lose that focus, people run because they're like, well, I mean, what am I doing? I have no idea.
Yeah. You get tired of the BS. You finally you take off the blinders. And you're like, wait.
Yeah, that's why a 22-year-old can. Oh yeah, I go because they don't. I mean, like when you were Gonky, when you were 23, did you care about anything other than I get to go fly this jet? This is the coolest thing I'll ever do.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't see past tomorrow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, it was my entire goal was to make it to something, pointy nose and fast.
All of the drawbacks, none of the perks. Clearly, bureaucracy in action.
I mean, it's hard to. I sit here and think about leadership, and I'm like, this cannot be an honest effort from genuine leadership. If it is, like, I'm just.
Well, it raises the question: is this the checklist? Right? Because they've done this before, and in previous years, right? Stop loss.
Yeah,
the stop loss was next. Was like, okay, we're going to try to get people to come back. No, can't do that. No one comes back. Okay, well, guess what? You're not leaving. But I don't understand. They have to fix, and we've talked about this before because I've talked to my friend in the higher levels, the higher headquarters. You've got a recruiting problem we've talked about. You've got a retention problem we've talked about, which is this. But then you've got production where you can't train people. And then you've got an actual cockpit shortage where you need fighter pilots, but you don't have any place to put them. So where do you put them while the pieces are shifting around? And right now we're in this big transition where, F-35 is standing up. Oh, nope, it's backlogged again. Well, it's backlogged and it's been grounded for this. And now we're down to these Viper squadrons. And we just got lost the schoolhouse for this. You have these bottlenecks that need to be alleviated in order to fix the problem. Meanwhile, it's the perfect storm because people are bailing for greener pastures and more money.
Well, I mean, what makes it even worse is, if you are in a leadership position in the military, how do you plan when it's like, okay, there's a CR that'll take us to the end of March. All right, there's one that'll take us to the end of April. You can't tell your maintainers, pilots, I mean, you name it. If there's a school they need to go to, you can't schedule it 6 months out. Why? Because they have no money.
Yeah.
Well, we may have money then. Well, how can you plan a professional fighting force with maybes?
But that's not the leadership of the military. That is Congress.
You okay, at the highest level, I mean, it's, you can, the buck has to stop somewhere, but the poor maintainer or pilot or navigator is sitting there trying to get quals and go to school. And, it kind of magnifies the problem you brought up, Mover. There's not enough IPs at the schoolhouse to get this done. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a real problem, with just the logistical planning of training and assets, which they're not doing a good job.
Yeah. Everything this happened before with the Army back in the mid 90s. They had the drawdown, offered the early retirements. Guys took it, and then when they needed guys back, they said, "You can come back, but you got to pay back all that money that you got to get out early." And all that.
How many takers? How many takers did they have?
No.
It's like y'all were saying. This has happened several times. This is not their first rodeo. It's like the guy commented earlier. It's maybe somebody just threw that out there as a, the good idea, Ferry. If somebody,
it was a joke. I was just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, now it's
Yeah.
Don't put my name on this.
We're back where we were in the mid 90s, boys. What's that plan we had?